The Icons of Real Estate Podcast. Are you ready to learn the proven money-making secrets from top-producing Icon agents? Ready to skyrocket your business? This podcast is for you. Tune in every week with your host, Tomasz Fonseca, and find out how to implement proven strategies to 10 times your business, from $3 million to $30 million in just 12 months. Brought to you by the Masters at Real Estate Marketing, Ardor SEO.
Welcome to the Icons of Real Estate. I'm Tim Calloway. We have a very special guest for you today from the great state of New Jersey, Joe Evangelisti. How are you, Joe?
I'm great, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, Joe is the CEO of Legacy Developers, where they help develop a multitude of things, but we're going to talk about mainly the storage facility business. But what I'd like to start with, Joe, is how did you get started?
Yeah, I got started as a very young kid. I grew up as a son of a general contractor, drywall contractor, turned general contractor. And I've been on job sites my whole life. My parents were, divorced at a really young age. So it was like nights and weekends were my dad. And that's where I went. I went to the job site and, he worked 7 days a week, as a lot of contractors do. And I got a lot of really good experience growing up, being on the site, watching stuff, develop and be created, and kind of got that in my blood that I always wanted to be like a builder. Right. And so, I was lucky enough right outside of high school to be able to into the US Navy's. I was actually a builder in the Seabees. Seabees are the construction battalions of the Navy. A lot of people don't even know what they are. Right. But I got to go around the world and build a lot of really cool projects in a lot of countries and meet some amazing people. And, after 6 years or so of that, very quickly jumped into flipping real estate and got into the lucky year in 2007.
It's good timing.
Was shifting. Exactly. And, the thing about that first year for me, the first 18 months or so, was we would just buy, these single family flips. I was doing it conventionally. I was putting 20% down. It was me and my business partner. And by the time the third flip had happened, by the time we get into that third flip, two things happened. Number one, I was broke. I had used all my savings. I had put it into 3 projects. I was fully expecting to triple my money and flip these houses and make a ton of bucks. Right. And what happened was the market started to slowly really soften. And then in September 2008, it crashed. And these houses went down 20%. And that was our profit margin. Right. So I knew I had to pivot and course correct and figure out, I got an obstacle in front of me. Right. What am I going to do? File bankruptcy or figure it out? Right. And so I never wanted to be a landlord, but, I had no other option at that point. So I put tenants in place, went back to the bank. I was able to stabilize long-term funding, 30-year amortization and refinance the properties. And, the tenants paid the nut. But the problem was I wasn't able to get my capital back. Right. I was able to just stabilize the construction or the loan that was in place, but not get my money back. So here I am on deal 3. Now I'm a landlord. I'm making $200 a month on each house instead of making $40,000, $50,000 selling them. Right. And I'm scratching my head saying, what's next? And, I quickly started gathering up other income streams. I bartended. I went and got my real estate license. I sold for a commission. And, that kind of got me into the whole pre-foreclosure short sale market. As a broker, I was able to go directly to sellers and say, hey, I can help you. Let us negotiate with the bank and get a better price. And back then it was the Wild West, man. The banks didn't have short sale to work out departments and all that kind of stuff. We would call them up and be like, hey, Sally Smith owes 200 grand on her house. I'll give you 100. And the bank would be like, yeah, give us 110 and close in 30 days.
Right. So I got to get out. I got
to move the asset. I got to reassign it. So that's really what got us heavier into the flip game. But I also had to figure out the money situation. Right. And, I remember back in the day when I was I was a young teenager. I had a Carlton Sheets, mastermind class that came in cassettes and books, cassette decks. And he's talked about a lot about creative financing and OPM, right? Using private money, getting sellers financing. So that's really the road we went down. It was I'd acquire with short sale, but then I had to go find private lenders, to create those opportunities with.
Yeah. It's funny. I love talking to people who have been around that stage, whether it was the early 2000s or for me, I'm a little bit older. It was actually in the early 90s. Yep. And that's the only way we did it is we sat our butts in a seat for about 3.5 hours. Right. And we listened to Carlton Sheets or whomever it was at the time. I can name a lot of them that had infomercials at 1 a.m. Right.
Yeah.
And and you learned a lot though. I mean, they gave you everything you needed, and now it's, it's at the flick of a switch, and
Oh,
join the right organization like yours, and you've got the knowledge. I love it. I love it.
yeah.
So you're building homes, or you're flipping homes, right?
Mhm.
And then you start learning about the foreclosure short sale market, dealing with the banks. Tell me about moving into OPMs, and how you started dealing with the individual investor versus the banks, which are a much more rigid type obviously institution.
Yeah, we were saying earlier, like I made this transition into, I knew I wanted OPM and I wanted private money and I wanted to do
Right.
business that way. And I developed this strategy over time that if you want money, ask for advice. And if you want advice, ask for money. So my first connection came through another guy I knew that had raised money. I said, hey, how you raising this money? I need to flip houses. Put me in touch with somebody. He said, talk to this investor. This guy buys tax liens from us. I think he'd be a great fit for you. If he's going to invest in tax liens, I don't see why he wouldn't invest in single family. And so I actually sat him down, and the first thing I did was ask for advice. Right. And immediately he was like, you need to talk to my banker. Let's go talk to the bank. And he brought us to do a presentation in front of the bank. And in hindsight, it was a great learning lesson. The
Right.
bank looked at us and they were like, you guys are way too new. You don't have any capital. We're not going to give you a
Right.
loan. Forget about it. Right. So we left that meeting, and that investor says to us, like, look, do you have a deal right now? I said, yeah, actually I got one. It's supposed to close like in 3 weeks. I said, it's, 125 acquisition. I'm going to put 50 grand into it, and I'm going to sell it for 250. So he said, look, I'm going to take a shot on you guys. I'll give you the 175. I want 12% interest and 20% of the profit. And I think one of the things I train people all the time to do in real estate is get in your first deal, no matter what. If you got to split equity, if you got to pay a big premium, like if you know it's a good deal, take a shot on yourself. And so we did that first deal really quickly, 90 days, resold it, turned around. Fast forward a week or two, and my investors got me at lunch, and he says, I want to give you a check for $5,000 back. And he hands me this check. He's like, I made too much money in that deal. It wasn't fair. And I actually ripped the check up and handed it back to him and said, forget it. Like we made a deal. That was our agreement. That was it. And from there, it really skyrocketed because he made introductions to all kinds of people. Everyone he introduced on the private side, he would tell them that story about having integrity, doing what we say we're going to do. And you got to realize back then I was broke. Like I didn't have an extra $5,000 to like throw around. $5,000 was everything to me. So it took a lot of guts to do that. But I also felt like, if that's what we agreed to, that's what we should do.
Yeah.
And, that carried us for 10, 12 years after that with private money because of just that one introduction. He was one of our biggest lenders the whole time we were working together.
Yeah, you just instant credibility and instant character for him. That's fantastic. That's a great story, man. And I may retell that story.
Yeah, you should.
I'll give you the credit though. So let's get to the future here and what you're doing now. So tell me about the storage market and storage facilities and what you're doing there.
Yeah, the storage facilities are interesting because it was like they always say, like every adversity plants the seed for opportunity. Right. And so looking back a few years, we were in the single family world and it was just a grind. Like we were doing 80 to 100 transactions a year, managing all that title, managing all that, the buyers, managing all the mortgages and, commitment letters. And are we going to close on time? And why is it getting extended? And home inspections. It just became so much transaction. Right. And the problem was two problems. One, I wasn't really paying my investors any equity in the deal at that point. I would just borrow their money, do a deal, hand it back to them. So I wasn't really building with them. They were just getting a return. And I wasn't really building myself. It was transactional. Like I'd make money on a deal and I'd have it spent again in 24 hours. And the money never seemed to, accumulate. So we really looked at it and said, okay. And, we saved, I think I had 120 houses at the time when we transitioned. So, I had a decent rental portfolio, but what people don't tell you and what the gurus don't tell you is it takes you 50 to 80 rental doors before you start making any money. The little bit of cash flow you're making on those doors gets eaten up on a new roof, new hot water heater, new refrigerator, make ready, paint this property, landscape this property. So whatever money you're making until you get to that like level of critical mass is going right back in the pot. Right. So for years we'd have 60, 70 doors and be like, dude, I can't pay myself $2,000 a month. Like we had no income. Right. And that gets lost on people in the single family world. You hear a lot of like people brag about what they're making. The reality of it is they're not conceptualizing what the real take home is, what the
net. Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
and in commercial real estate, it's different, right? Commercial real estate, it's built off of what you net. It's literally called net operating income. Everything buy and sell, the value, the physical value of the project is based on what it nets, right? So everyone's job is to create the best net to create the best outcome for the project. You just don't get into that kind of detail when it comes to single family rental properties, in my experience. So we knew we wanted to make a transition into a new industry. I needed something that was scalable. I needed something that was more manageable. I needed something we could build a more effective and efficient team. And that's really what we got with self-storage. We started out with 45 or so employees in the single family game. Now we're down to 11 really strong A players that know what they're doing, that know how to operate, that know how to acquire and really underwrite great deals around the country. So we're starting to build, and it's always a work in progress, right? But we're starting to build in my opinion, one of the best development acquisition teams in the country.
Wow. That's fantastic. Really. So what are your prerequisites for area? And, we talked a little bit about this before. We talked about area, but what about size of facility? Is it a rubber stamp, or is it like just depending on the density of the area?
Yeah. So for me personally, I only want to build Class A sites. It's a great question, right? We only do 80,000 and plus square footage. That's our criteria. So I don't want anybody listening to this to be like, oh, I have to build 100,000 square foot. You don't.
Right.
You can go buy 10,000, 20,000. You can go buy 15 garage bays and make it a self-storage and expand over time. But when we started this thing, we decided right up front, I want to be developing straight up. I want to work directly with some of the top management companies in the country, Q Smart, Extra Space, Life Storage. And so I underwrite the deal as a Class A facility because that's what they're going to want to manage. You're not going to get Q Smart to come out and manage 12 doors, right? So you have to have a critical mass for them to want to manage that. But I also want to be on the radar when it comes to buying. And so Class A facilities are always going to be worth the most amount of money down the road when it meets that buy box, when I can at least get 100,000 square foot in one MSA or multiple deals that add up to that, or each deal is that, and there's 3 of them, right? So I want to get to a point where I can create that buyout down the road, 10 or 15 years. And I'm not going to have to find individual buyers because they're small projects. Like the big boys will buy 10, 20 deals at a time if they're all Class A.
Right. Okay. Makes sense. So how do you find your investors? I mean, they have to be accredited, of course.
Yep.
Are you always on the lookout for new investors, or you cap them, or how does that work with you?
Yeah, believe it or not, we do a lot of investor relations through social media. My chief investment officer does a lot of social media engagement. He basically runs ads on good and bad investments in the market. He's got 20 years in Morgan Stanley, so he was a private investment. I forget what they call it, a private investment officer, but
private investment banker.
Private investment bank, yeah, and he ran with high net worth individuals for 20 years. So he speaks that language. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, that's fantastic. Definitely. So, if I ask this of most everybody, kind of going off the beaten path a little bit, about a magic wand to solve any issues you may have that maybe keep you up at night or maybe you think about constantly, what would that be?
Yeah, as a visionary in my company, I look at it like I'm the big problem solver, and I'm also the people problem solver. And I'm always thinking about, if your audience hasn't read the book Who Not How by Dan Sullivan, it's absolutely fantastic. So I'm always thinking who not how, right? Who can I add to expand to our team? Who can I create opportunity for? Who's going to help us level up to the next level in 3 years and 5 years? So for me, it's always people. Right now, we're starting a new fund, and I'm looking for basically a CEO or a chief investment officer for the fund who's really going to, take that thing and run with it. It's always somebody on our team, it seems, and it seems like they keep getting higher level and higher level, which is amazing. That's how we grow. Yeah,
that's fantastic. That's the right way to do it for sure. So you do have a mastermind group, correct? Or you have a group that you work with?
Yeah, they say adversity plants a seed for opportunity, right? And as we grew and as we started to expand and we put the word out that we're like buying self-storage facilities, what happened was we start getting inundated by people who are like, I can find you sites, or do you have any sites I can buy? Or, how do I get invested in the business? Or, how do I meet other people like-minded? So we started to create this mastermind this year. It's called the Storage Syndicate. You can go to storagesyndicate.com and check it out if you'd like. But essentially, it's all like-minded individuals who bring some part to the pie, some piece to the puzzle, right? Like either they're good at finding deals or they want to learn how to find deals. We have people with no real estate experience at all that come in there and get involved in equity in these $20 million deals. So the group alone has done 7 transactions inside of the atmosphere in the last 9 months. And so, to me, to see folks come in, invest in themselves, but then also take action, show up, come to the events, come to the lives, come to the trainings, and then get access to other people that help them create. Two of our clients this year are from Canada and bought their first development deal in the United States. So it's like, if you have a will and you have an ambition and you have a reason to go out and then succeeding, nothing can stop you. I don't even care if you're from the country.
Right. It doesn't matter. It's all out there. That's the nice thing about, I would attribute a little bit of that now to the internet, obviously, as opposed to when I was young and I had to go sit in a chair and listen to somebody. Right.
Yeah.
So if somebody wanted to invest with you, or maybe they just want to, join your mastermind group, or just, pull your ear a little bit and say, hey, how do I do this? Sounds like you're the type of guy to lead people down the right path. How would they get in touch with you?
Yeah, 100%. I would send them to storagesyndicate.com. Inside of there's a 10-minute game plan call. It's not a sales call. It's not a deep dive. It's not a discovery call. It's like literally 10 minutes. You book with my little brother who runs the mastermind group. And really, he's going to find out, like, what do you need? What are you looking for? What are you trying to accomplish? Do you want to transition into self-storage from single family? Do you want to put money to work because you're an investor and you don't trust what's out there in the market? Do you have deals and you want to help sell those deals inside the group? There's, like I said, it's a common, we call it a syndicate for that reason. We're all together to see each other win individually and as a group. So yeah, I think the best place would be to, go to storagesyndicate.com and just hit that book a call. Like I said, it's 10 minutes, just get to know you a little bit and see if we have a solution for you. We might not.
I think that's a master plan right there.
You got it.
Hey, Joe, I always give everybody the floor, the last minute or two of this show. You had a wealth of knowledge you've shared with us. There's got to be a little nugget in there that you've wanted to share, or maybe something close to your heart that you had to say. Floor is yours.
I appreciate that. I do a lot of executive coaching. I do a lot of coaching in the self-storage space and helping people find deals. There's one bit of advice that sounds so simple. It's just take action. Get started. Do something, right? There's a great book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. I actually have a copy of it sitting over there. And Mark talks about the do something principle. Like, too many people are trying to get inspired by YouTube or watching this podcast and being like, man, I love what Timothy's doing, or I love what Joe's doing. You can love what they're doing all day long, but if you don't put one foot in front of the other, you're not going to get any closer to your goals. My goals are not your goals. They don't have to be. They shouldn't be.
Right.
You should have your own goals, but take some action every day in that direction. Get started, make a phone call, reach out to a mentor, join a group, do something in the direction that you're trying to achieve.
Sage advice for sure. Joe, thanks so much for being on the show. I look forward to talking to you maybe the next 3, 6, 9 months down the road, watching you grow, and we'll touch base then.
Appreciate you having me. Thanks.
Have a good one.